Today I'm creating monochrome florals with a fun, colourful background. Hello there, Michelle Short here with Terrific Tags with Michelle. I'm here on the Altenew YouTube channel on the first and third Saturday of the month. So if you like my videos, I'd love for you to subscribe if you aren't already. So let's get started with the tutorial. I'm starting off by taking the Airbrushed Flowers stamp set. I thought that these would be really good for monochrome flowers because they've kind of got like some added detail to the layers, I suppose. So everything is not completely solid. So some of the layers in this set are solid, but I'm not actually using those today. I'm kind of jumping ahead, missing out the solid layer and just adding the detail layer. So starting off with the outline images, I'm taking one of the flowers and the two leaves, and I'm going to stamp them down onto some classic Crest 110 solar white cardstock. I've then got space for my sentiments, so I'm taking the Hello sentiment from the Builder Garden Daisy Crown add-on die bundle. I absolutely love these sentiments. They're quite bold, which is nice, and you also have the coordinating dies if you get the add-on bundle, so that's really helpful. I really love how they look, especially with these monochrome flowers. So I'm bringing in the top flip plate of the stamp wheel. I can pick up those images and then I can ink them up with my favourite black ink, which is Obsidian Pigment Ink. If you've watched any of my videos, you won't be surprised at this. I really love just the crisp dark outline of this ink. So inking up these stamps really well. I ideally don't want to stamp them more than once, and quite often with this pigment ink I don't need to, which is really helpful, but I do need to stamp the sentiment twice because it's got a very solid kind of image to it. I do just want to make sure that I get a really nice impression of that sentiment. So I've inked up all of those images. I can flip over that flip plate, pop it in place in the stamp wheel, and then I can press that down. Just making sure to run my fingers over all of the areas, make sure that I get a really nice impression. I can then lift off that plate, and then I did remove the flower and the leaves from the plate because I knew that I didn't need to re-ink them a second time. I got a really nice impression the first time, but for that hello I do want to stamp that twice. I can then take the kind of detailed layers of these images. Like I say, I'm missing out the solid one and just going for the detail one. Because it's got kind of like an airbrushed look to it, I thought that in particular this set would work really nice for this monochrome look because I'm just doing them black. I didn't want the kind of detail layer to be completely solid. I wanted there to be some depth to it, so I'm just aligning up that flower to start with, and then I can line up the leaves as well. And I do find because of the nature of the kind of layer to it, I don't think it matters completely if you don't line them up perfectly. I don't actually line up the flower properly, but I will get into that in a second. So just bringing in the plate so that I can pick those stamps up, and then again I'm going to ink them up with the Obsidian Pigment Ink. And I do just want to make sure that I really ink up these stamps very well because there is quite a lot of solid areas to them. So once I think that I've inked up that flower enough, I can flip over the plate and then I can stamp those down. And you'll see that as I lift up this plate that I didn't line up the flower perfectly. I did line up the leaves really nicely, but not quite the flower. But because I'm stamping in black ink, I can actually have a kind of really great trick to be able to fill in the extra areas. So here underneath that petal in particular on the bottom right hand side, you can kind of see where I've missed that off. So I'm bringing in a black fine liner pen and I'm just filling in those areas. So no one will ever know that I didn't line up this area perfectly. But what actually I thought I would do, as I've got the black pen out, is not only fill in the areas where it should be solid, I'm also going to extend that kind of dot detail a little bit further into some of the areas, just to, as I say, add a little bit more depth to these flowers. Because it's just black and white, I do want there to be quite a lot of interest. So I'm just going around first of all with the kind of solid areas, and then I can go in sort of adding in this kind of dot detail, just bringing that kind of solid area out a little bit into the rest of the image. So definitely don't be afraid to kind of add in extra details onto stamped images if you want to. This is a great pen to be able to do that with. I have picked the 0.5, but there are a few different thicknesses in that set. I'm then taking the coordinating dies, placing those over the images and holding them down with some low tack tape. I can then run those through my die cutting machine. And I did decide to cut another of the hello die twice from white cardstock, just so that I can stack those one on top of each other to add a little bit of dimension onto this sentiment. I didn't want to adhere it down with foam tape, so this is a really great way to add that dimension without the foam tape. And it's also going to make it so that there are a few different kind of thicknesses of layers onto my tag as well. I've then cut two of the Terrific Tags dies. This is one of the larger tags in the set, and I've cut that from some classic Crest 110 solar white cardstock. I'm then going to add the colour to my tag with gradient cardstock. So I've got the Summer Afternoon collection and also the Cherry Blossom collection, and I'm taking two colours from each of the sets. Now ordinarily I would go with kind of 5 different colours. I just prefer to have an odd number, but I really love this colour combination together and I didn't really want to add in anything extra. So I'm bringing in my mini guillotine here so that I can cut these cardstock panels into strips. So I'm just cutting off the little excess there, and then I can use the markings on my guillotine to cut 1/4 inch strips. So I can just move them across onto each of those notches, which is really helpful, and it gives me a guide on where I want to cut these strips. I did decide to cut them all of the same thickness, but I could vary that quite easily. I have done that in the past and I do really like that look, but for this one I wanted them to be all the same thickness. So I'm just going through here doing that with all of the pieces of cardstock. I can then add some liquid glue onto the back of these strips, and I'm starting off at the bottom of my tag. I want to make sure that the angle of that cardstock is kind of the same angle as the bottom of that tag where that kind of fishtail banner is. So I just found it a little bit easier to start at the bottom and work my way up. So adding some liquid glue, that just helps me have some kind of wiggle time to wiggle them in place and get them as straight as possible. I am leaving a tiny white gap in between the strips. I just quite like the look. I don't necessarily have to do that. I could definitely butt them up against each other, and I do think that that looks nice as well. But because I'm leaving a white gap at the top and the bottom of the tag, I thought it would be quite nice just to add that gap in between them as well. So I added all of the colours, and then I'm going back and adding another layer of all of the colours as well, just finishing off with that light pink there at the top. I can then lift off that tag. Some of the glue did dry a little bit onto my craft mat, but thankfully this craft mat cleans up really nicely and I can just remove that with my finger. I'm then taking some scissors and I'm cutting from the back. I just find that a little bit easier than cutting from the front. So I'm just cutting off the excess from either side. I can keep all of these little pieces. They are really helpful to kind of line up, especially if you want to do any kind of smaller die cutting with them. I quite like doing that. I'm then adding some glue tape onto the back of the other tag, and then I can adhere these two tags back to back. That not only is going to give me some stability to the tag, I quite like having it a little bit thicker, but it also makes it so that it's really nice on the back if I want to write a personal message. I can then bring in the flower and the leaves so that I can figure out where I want to place them before I stick anything down. I am going to cover a lot of the colour up in the background, but I did just kind of want that pop of colour behind these, and it's a quite a nice way to have like the black and white flowers but actually have the colour in the background. And for some reason I do think it makes the kind of black and white pop a little bit more from the tag, which is a quite nice way to be able to kind of, like I say, add the colour onto the tag. I have added a little bit of glue tape onto the back of these leaves here on the left hand side, and I'm just going to stick those down. I do want to have them overhanging the sides of the tag. I just happen to like that look. I can then arrange that flower again so that I can see where I want to adhere this other leaf. So adding some glue tape onto the back of that. I don't want to add it all the way to the edge of this leaf because I know that I'm going to overhang this from the tag. So kind of just figuring that out. I want to make sure that it overlaps. I do know that it's not going to overlap kind of symmetrically on the other side because this leaf is a little bit smaller, but I do just want to make sure that it does overhang a little bit. And then the sentiment is going to overhang more. I decided that I didn't really like having that stem piece of the flower there so that you could see it. So I just cut that off. I'm just making sure here that when I add the sentiment over the top, it's going to hide that area. I can then add some instant dimension foam tape onto the back of the flower. Remove the backings off of that foam tape, just using some tweezers here just to help me out. And then I can adhere that down onto the tag. So just pressing down lightly to start with, making sure that the sentiment is going to be in the right place, and then once I'm happy I can really press that down. I can then add some more glue tape onto the back of the sentiment, and I'm also just grabbing some liquid glue as well just to add a little bit of extra adhesive onto that sentiment. Make sure that it's going to stick down really nicely. And then I can pop that on top. And because it's overhanging the flower a little bit, I do just want to bring in a little bit more foam tape and pop that underneath on the right hand side. I can then add some twine through the top of the tag and tie that in a bow at the top. So just adjusting the size of that bow there, and then I can cut the tails down with some scissors. And then again, if you've watched any of my videos before, you know that I love to embellish with black enamel dots. So I'm just adding a few around the flower here. So adding a couple here towards the bottom, and then a couple towards the top. I do like to add embellishments kind of like in a triangle. And I also like to add them in odd numbers as well. So just bringing in this last one here to add towards the top on the right hand side. Again, adding them lightly in case I want to move them. And then once I'm happy, I can really press those down. And that is the tag finished for today. I really love that kind of colourful background and then just having the monochrome flowers on top. Links to the products that I used will be listed in the description bar on YouTube and also over on the Altenew blog. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Hey there, Lydia here. I really do hope that you've just enjoyed the video. If so, please subscribe to the Altenew YouTube channel. Also, turn on the notification bell so you can get your daily dose of crafty techniques and tutorials just like this. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.